It's common knowledge that if you want to build muscle, increase strength, or increase lean body mass, you need to participate in some form of resistance training. But with all the different types of protocols out there, it begs the question, what is right for me? And which protocol is best for me and my fitness goals? Well, in this video, I'll be comparing the difference between using supersets and standard training protocols, and when you should implement one or the other, or both, into your training regime. If this sounds interesting to you, or if you're anything like me and you want to find ways to optimize your training, this video is for you, and I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. If you're new to the channel, my name is Sean, and on this channel I talk about everything that is fitness and explore different methods to optimize your training so you can meet your fitness goals. If this type of content piques your interest, don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you turn on post notifications so that you are notified every time I upload a video. And I'm going to ask a favor in advance. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, please don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps the YouTube algorithm and spreads my video to more people to try and increase the views and also the subscriber count. So thank you in advance. All this being said, let's get started. As stated at the beginning of this video, resistance training is known to increase your strength, power, and lean body mass. However, many athletes struggle to commit to the prolonged commitment of resistance training, especially if they have other commitments or they're involved in other skill-based training. So one way to make the time lifting weights a little bit more efficient is to implement supersets. But before we get into that, it's important to know what a superset is. In short, a superset is a completion of 2 exercises consecutively followed by a rest period, instead of the traditional style of training where the rest period is followed by every single exercise. In theory, you should be able to complete a session using supersets in half the time it would take to complete a traditional session. Though this is likely to be true, it's important to appreciate that this style of training does have its limitation and may not be beneficial to all athletes. In order to decide if this style of training is for you, it's worth delving into the scientific literature to understand the potential effects of this style of training. And lucky for us, Weekly and colleagues carried out an investigation in 2017 which looked at the effects of traditional and superset resistant training structures and the perceived intensity and physiological response. They investigated this by recruiting 14 male rugby players with at least a 2-year history of resistance training and had them participate in traditional and superset training protocols over a 4-week period in a randomized crossover design. The rated perceived exertion, lactate concentration, creatine kinase concentration, counter movement jump, looking at the height of what they could jump as well as the air time, and also testosterone levels were monitored and taken pre, post, and 24 hours after training sessions, allowing the researchers to establish and compare the acute and also the short-term physiological effects of these training structures. According to their findings, the rate of perceived exertion was a lot higher in the groups that had participated in supersets. However, the perceived load was lower. So that's basically saying that they felt that even though the intensity of the session was higher, the amount of weight they shifted was lower when compared to traditional training. But interestingly, from a physiological point of view, this was very different due to the fact that the creatine kinase concentration and the lactate concentration was a lot higher when people performed supersets, suggesting that there was a greater metabolic load and more muscle damage with this style of training, which in the grand scheme of things is a positive. And these effects were seen immediately after training and also 24 hours later. Within the same group, testosterone levels were also higher straight after training and also 24 hours later. So at this point, it's sounding very positive for supersets. However, there were some negative. For example, cortisone, a stress hormone, and counter movement jump were negatively affected by doing supersets. And this was seen immediately after training and also 24 hours later. And taking this a step further, counter movement jump in the participants that performed traditional style of training had resumed back to baseline after 24 hours of training. But the same assessment in participants that performed supersets still had a lower counter movement jump 24 hours after training, suggesting that from a performance point of view, supersets had a negative impact. So interestingly, from this study, performing supersets appears to be more efficient and is likely to provoke adaptive changes such as increased stamina and endurance due to the increase in the metabolic load this style of training seems to provoke. but it is likely to be detrimental to athletes that are in skill-based activities or sports due to its negative impact on performance. Some experts such as Jim Stoppany, who has a PhD in exercise physiology, suggest that new lifters should avoid supersets until they have about 6 months of training underneath their belt due to the stress placed on their untrained muscles and their need to recover between sets to stimulate optimal muscle strength and growth. What strikes me as interesting in this comment is he doesn't discredit this form of training, suggesting that under certain circumstances, supersets may be beneficial, which begs the question, when is a good time to implement supersets in your training? Well, whichever way you look at it, performing supersets is more efficient and will reduce the amount of time that you spend training. So if time is a main limitation for you due to life commitments, then there's no two ways about it. Supersets will be beneficial, especially if you're a casual gym goer and your main goal is just to stay as fit as possible and potentially build or maintain muscle. And for those of you who your goal is hypertrophy, supersets is a great way to increase the volume in each session. Also, for those of you that want to keep your body fat percentage as low as possible while maintaining muscle, using supersets is likely to increase your energy output, potentially burning more calories than traditional style of training. So who should avoid using supersets? Those whose main goal is strength. Supersets are not an ideal way to train for maximal strength, and that's because between sets you want to be recovered in order to be able to lift as much as possible each rep each time. As discussed earlier in the video, it's also recommended that new lifters avoid using supersets, and that's because they're not neurologically adapt enough in order to sustain good form throughout each rep. So their focus needs to be the fundamental movement of the exercise in order for it to be beneficial in the long run. And lastly, those who need to perform at a high level in a sport or skill-based activity. More so, they should also avoid this style of training during competition season. This is because the physiological and the metabolic stress may have a negative impact on their performance due to fatigue. Personally, I have been implementing supersets for many years, and every 8 to 12 weeks I will change my program. What I have found from using supersets is it's definitely helped me from a stamina point of view, due to the fact that I put so much metabolic stress on my body when I'm training. This has also crossed over into other activities like gymnastics. At the same time as saying that, I do find my performance in terms of being able to physically do those activities is definitely a lot lower when I'm training using Supersets protocol. And that is likely just because, as I said in the study, it takes over 24 hours for your body to get back to baseline from a physical performance point of view after your supersets training. Therefore, if for example on a Monday I train a normal session using supersets and then Tuesday go to gymnastics, I haven't had that full 24-hour rest period. On top of that, my training at the moment is 5 days a week in the gym, 2 days in gymnastics. Therefore, there is no 24-hour rest period to allow my physical performance to go back to baseline, which is not something that I would advise over the long run. However, cardiovascular fitness is very important to me, and I want to be as physically active as possible for as long as possible, especially as I'm getting older. So with that being said, I'm willing to take a little bit of a negative impact from a performance point of view in order to increase my stamina. So there you have it. There are a lot of positives and negatives to using supersets. It's worth considering the positives and the negatives discussed in this video when you are deciding if this form of training is right for you and if it's the right time for you to implement it. And ultimately, this is going to be governed by where you are in your fitness journey and what is your goal. Are you working towards performance? Or are you working towards hypertrophy? Or are you working towards strength? And now obviously knowing a little bit more about what the physiological effects and the effects on performances in this style of training, you are now more equipped to make a decision about what style of training you should implement. As I said at the beginning, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please do hit the like button, subscribe, and also share the video if you can. Turn on your post notifications, and I hope to see you all in the next one. But until then, peace.